Sandi Hall, let me just explain your background. First of all,
Okay.
Sandi Hall, I had the pleasure of working with Sandi, if you remember Sandi, many years ago. We did work with the vibration belt, right? I think it was in Ottawa.
Yeah.
We did work
Yeah.
with the vacuum brush. You worked with young Henry. And by the way, I just spoke to Henry the other day, and I don't know how many years later this is, but he enjoyed working with you so much, and he told me to say hello to you.
Oh, that's nice. That's sweet.
Yes.
Say hi back to him.
I will certainly do that. Now, Sandi, as you know, home computers, Sunday shopping, the shopping channel, they haven't always been around. I mean, in recent history, that was you weren't allowed to shop on Sunday. That was against the law, right? And then, of course, they allowed Sunday shopping. But same was the shopping channel. Now, I went on Wikipedia, and there's your name right there. The first host on Canadian on-air shopping. And can you tell me, and not only that, but you were instrumental in the birth of the shopping channel with a video demo, I believe. Can you take me through the story of
right. Well, of course. So back in the mid '80s, I lived in Vancouver. I worked in radio, and I used to do some voiceover work for a small production company, which two gentlemen owned, one Andrew and Robert. And Andrew called me one day and said, "Can you come on down to the studio? Robert and I want to talk to you about this idea we have." I said, "Great, no problem." I'm young, I'm enthusiastic. I've just graduated from BCIT with a broadcasting degree. So I go and I watch. Robert had just come back from vacation in Florida. Now, this was 1986. And he pulled out the old beta machine and the big beta tape and plopped it in. And we watched this video of of Home Shopping Network in Florida back in the mid '80s, which was, and you can appreciate this, Larry, pure carnival, like tooting horns and not 10, not 9, like counting down, right?
Right.
So they said to me, "We have this idea that we can do this here in Canada. We're thinking we could maybe get a 3 or 4 hour block a day in Vancouver on Vancouver TV, but we need a tape. Will you do a demo tape for us? And if so, you'll be the host when we get the financing." And I said, "Sure, of course." Meanwhile, I'm terrified. I'm radio. I don't do video. But we went into the studio. They'd written up a script, and I basically was a barker, like a Carney Barker for hours and hours. We did this tape, and it was me doing a demo for Andrew go and try to start this little home shopping on TV station, which was going to happen in Vancouver. So anyway, Robert and Andrew left Vancouver, and I guess they went on the road with their act and my video. And they called me about a month later. Andrew was my guy that I would talk to, and Andrew said, "Sandi, this is way bigger than we thought. Like this, not in Vancouver. It's going to. And how do you feel about coming to Toronto?" Well, I'm from Toronto. I was born and raised. My family's in Toronto, so it was an easy transition for me. So sure enough, within about 5 or 6 months, they'd gotten the financing, private at that time, by the way. It wasn't Rogers' own.
No.
It was private finance. No. And I moved to Toronto, and the training started, and there was a few of us that had started with the training, and which was, as Norm had mentioned, they'd hand us like lipstick or a cup and say, "Talk about this until you can't think of one more thing to say."
Yes.
So that's how it all started. Two men who had this vision, which was admittedly copying HSN in Florida.
Well, they were affiliated with HSN at the beginning, were they not? Or no?
No, absolutely not.
They just did it.
No.
And inspired.
Sorry?
They were just inspired from what they saw.
They were inspired. They thought, and I'll tell you why they went alphanumeric, which was the still shots in the beginning, right?
Right.
Was because if they waited for the full license from CRTC, they may not have been first. Because believe me, other people obviously had seen this and thought there was potential. Sure. But these two men were entrepreneurs. They started radio stations and these men were amazing. So the only way, through a technicality, they could go on air immediately was to get an alphanumeric license.
Right. Yes.
And that's why it was still shots for the first number of years.
Yeah. No,
and then I had the pleasure of launching, right? I had the pleasure of launching.
That is amazing. So they would, I know Nora mentioned it as well, but for those that missed that show, take us through the alphanumeric. How does that work? And what does it mean?
Alphanumeric meant that you could, what you were verbally saying could only relate to the visual that people were seeing at home. So if there was a picture of a cup on air,
yes.
Technically, you could talk about the cup. You couldn't expand on, you could drink from the cup, or this cup is really handy for traveling in your car. Technically, you're only supposed to describe it. We bent all the rules. I mean, we got away with tons of stuff, right? Yeah. But, and then eventually, after a number of years, it was sold to Rogers. And that's when Rogers got involved, and they sent in their own team. And look what they've managed to take it to today. It's incredible. But people made fun of it.
Yes.
Like I remember the articles when the station first came out. A lot of them unflattering to me because I was the first host and on air, and there was like, this is a joke, and jokes on them.
Yeah. So how many years was it alphanumeric, and then when did the CRT license?
Well, we launched in January '87. And I believe we were probably alphanumeric for a good 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. No, yeah. I remember the alphanumeric, and I mean, it didn't capture my interest as a shop because it wasn't, none of the products were geared towards me. So I didn't really watch it much.
You didn't like Crystal Robbins and Cappa de Monte, Larry?
Oh, no, I just couldn't afford any of that stuff.
That's right.
Who was it? It was Betty Jean's husband. Was he not one of the guests or the hosts as well when it launched?
He wasn't one of the first. No, he wasn't one of the first. But Bargain Bill, we called him. Bargain Bill showed up within the first year.
Oh my God, Bargain Bill. That's right.
Bargain Bill. So the very first core group, the only ones left years later, was Alexandra Elliott and myself.
Wow.
There was a girl named Nora, and other names, I have to admit to you, I don't remember.
Okay.
I've aged.
What about Hugh? Wait, you still look good. Hugh Wilson, was he around then, or?
No, he was not one of the originals either, no matter what Wikipedia says, no.
Okay,
and in fact, I started doing all the training at the shop, Hugh Wilson. But Hugh was great. He was terrific on air, and he was originally slotted in the middle of the night. And then he quickly worked his way to not being in the middle of the night.
Yes.
And then ultimately took the job as the manager of the hosting department.
That's right. No, I had the pleasure meeting him many years ago.
He had that role. I had that role. Betty Jean had that role.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's all right. Yeah. No, just saying, Hugh Wilson. No, he did my on-air training with me and helped me when I first started. And I mean, it wasn't much. I already had, show experience. So it was a quick, I think we talked for about 20 minutes and I got the work. And I loved the shopping channel. I mean, the first experience I ever had meeting Richard Nestor, Betty Jean, Carol Fish, Norm Murray. I was on cloud nine. It was when that red light went on. I mean, as long as I've pitched at shows, it was like starting all over because it was like my heart was racing. You forget everything you planned on saying, and adrenaline just kicked in. So it was something. So,
wow.
Now,
yeah.
So do you remember the first product when it was live that you did? Do you remember that? Like, what were your products?
Oh, when we went the very first time, the very first day on air?
Tell me both. Do you remember back what the first one? Because.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh, Larry, I've got a funny story about the first day on air. So we're going to launch, and they picked me to go first, and it was quite an honor and quite intimidating, right? Because there was a handful of us who could have been picked, but they chose me. So back then there was no real computer. So how they did it was we had a computer sitting at a station where we were up on a pedestal on air, and on this computer was just a brief, maybe a 5-sentence description of the product we would talk, but we didn't see the product. The product was to the cameras, which were a good 30, 40 feet away. You couldn't really see them. And you couldn't see the details, and you didn't know the specs on it. And they were all silly products because nobody would sell anything to the shopping channel, right? So the first day we're going on air, we're about to go on. Tons of media people showed up that day. Like City TV was there, CBC was there, the National was there, and they're all with their cameras. And I'm actually feeling sick. Like, I'm scared to death. I'm a 28-year-old radio person, you know. So John Goldberg, who was the financier, was on air, and he said, this is what this is, and this is what we see. And about 10 minutes before we're going on air, the IT department comes running up to us and says, the computers have crashed.
Oh, wow.
There's no computer. So John turns to me and says, can you wing this? And I'm like, of course I can wing it. Again, sweating bullets.
Sure.
So what happened now was they're wheeling product out, and I can't even really tell what it is except from a still shot on the monitor, right? So they're wheeling out crystal robins, and they're wheeling out vases, and there was a toilet paper roll. And then, Larry, they wheel out a Bible. And I grew up with religion, right?
I feel like
so
saying,
I thought,
oh my God.
yeah, I finally went, thank goodness, I know the Bible. I grew up with religion.
Oh, wow.
So I start talking about the Bible like no one's read it. I start giving a review, like there's Genesis and the story of the Exodus, and then it goes to Leviticus, and I go into Psalms and into Revelations and John, Luke. Oh my God, it was so bad. But at the time I felt excited because finally I could talk about something, right?
Yes. Now
so
they were
that night,
selling a Bible.
Correct.
Wow.
So that night on air, the National, this is how they introduced the shopping channel. The guy made total fun of it, said it was a fad. It was a pretty well-known host too, whose name I can't
was
remember.
a fad? No, I'm just kidding.
That's right, the Bible's just a fad. And said, and this book comes with good reviews. And then there's me saying, it's a good book. It really, really is. So I was so humiliated. It was so bad. But anyway, that was the first day they got the computers up and life went on. The first live show, I also had the pleasure of doing. They asked me to launch that too, which was awesome. And I worked with a fitness trainer named Brenda Digraph, who I think still may do some shows. She's always in England at least.
Yeah.
Well, perfect first live show because it was full of energy and we were wearing exercise clothes. It was very exciting. So,
wow, I remember, God, I guess it was back in 79 or in 80. Out west, there was a three brothers, and this goes back to the Bible. They were selling at the shows the Bible in drama on cassette tapes. And I think it sold for I don't know how many tapes. It was like 12 tapes or maybe more, but it sold for $1,200 back in those days, which was, just to put that into comparison, I was selling a little red crayon for foggy glasses for $3 each, 2 for $5, and you get 3 of them for $6. So here's, my neighbors asking for $1,200 and getting it, right? And it was, it's a Bible in drama. So they had hired actors, and they did the passages, and they did stories right out of the Bible. And all 3 brothers, I think they were from, I don't know, maybe Saskatchewan or Regina, I don't know, from Regina. I believe they lived in Regina. They all had motorhomes, like $50,000 motorhome, the best ones you could find. And I was so impressed with that act, And so that's funny that you were selling Bibles on the shopping channel. That's
right.
Great.
Well, you know what? Early days, like the products, crazy. They weren't great products, right? So.
Right. Well, I think because you were just starting, and you didn't have as Norm mentioned, you didn't really have the respect until it became videos, right? Then it was a little more serious.
Well, I say, yeah, and actually, even before we went live, it started to be recognized. I remember our first $10,000 sales day, and then our first $100,000 sales day, and then our first $100,000 3-hour show. And listen, you think that the Nikes and the Sonys of the world and the Royal Daltons weren't paying attention to that? You're darn right they were.
Yes.
They were. So the product started to show up.
funny you should say $10,000 day. I mean, that's how long ago it was, because now the dollars per minute, right? You got to do a lot more than $10,000 in a day if you want to get the airtime.
Yeah.
And again, back then, wasn't it an hour? They had hour slots for products, right? Did they not give more?
Well, what happened back then was what happened was they didn't have a lot of products. So what would happen too is the host controlled how long things were going to be shown for.
Okay.
So I would, if you got sick of talking about something, you had a list of what was supposed to be on your show. You didn't get away with not doing your show.
Yes.
You could say that, you could on your intercommunication with your producer and say, move, next product, please, right? And they would give you the countdown. But back then, they didn't have sizes, and they did a lot of that fake jewelry, right?
Yes.
And so if you had a solitaire cubic zirconia ring, and it went from sizes 5 till 10, you had to talk about size 5, then size 6, then size 7, about a solitaire for an hour. And then just mention the only size available now is this size.
Wow.
It was hard. It was a really different game then. Yeah.
That's amazing. Now back then,
anyway, you learn to talk about things for a long time.
Do you remember any of the first celebrity guests that came on and who it was?
Phyllis Diller.
Wow.
Phyllis Diller came on.
Wow, one of my old-time favorites.
And she was selling beauty products.
Oh my God.
You can imagine.
I love it.
And I have a funny Phyllis Diller story. And also, by the way, Larry, we were fully live. There was no delay.
Okay.
Like and then we started taking phone calls on air, live phone calls. And let me tell you, we had our finger on that hang up button because people could say foul, vile things.
Oh my God, yes.
And there was no delay.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, Phyllis Diller story. Do you want a funny one?
Yes, please.
So she's on air with Alexandra Elliott, and Alexandra was doing her talking, very excellent on air. And Alexandra finishes, maybe talking for a minute, maybe 2 at the most, and then asks Phyllis a question. So the camera then pans on to Phyllis, and Phyllis says, "Sound is so sweet."
I love it.
Oh, it's so funny. So Alexandra had to give her a couple of little nudges, and she's like, "Whoa."
Oh,
anyway,
wow.
That was hilarious. We watched that blooper tape. The production studio used to do blooper tapes because everything was live, right?
Sure.
And we used to watch them every month. Oh gosh, we used to laugh so hard at some of the things that happened live on air. It was so different then.
Yes. Now.
Yeah.
Now Phyllis. So there was beauty products that Phyllis Diller was. That's funny. I mean, it's because she wasn't known for her beauty. She was a beautiful lady.
No.
She was a beautiful lady, but she played her look, with the hair.
Correct. Yeah.
What an excellent showman. She was a great showman.
She was great.
Like Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers. She just made more fun of herself, like Phyllis Diller.
Yeah.
What was Phyllis Diller's husband's name? Fang? No, not Fang. What was it? Do you remember? She used to always joke about.
No, I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember either now. But
it might have been Fang. It might have been Fang, actually.
Yeah.
I remember watching her on Joan a lot. You and I are really aging ourselves.
I'm going to ask Siri, my friend Siri, and she knows. She knows everything, Siri. That's it. Now, any other guests?
She does know everything.
Yes, she does.
Well, we had Jacqueline Stallone.
Okay.
Jacqueline Stallone was a very regular guest with us. Tony Little, who wasn't a star then. He started out. Right.
I brought my
but boy, he was good. He brought a whole new. He had so much energy. That guy was great. I left working there as a host in '95, and then I was a guest after that. I would just come back and be a guest, like you, right? Yeah. So I didn't really after that because I was the guest. I wasn't working with any stars. So the number of years I was there weren't the big stars. Right. We had some soap opera people arrive.
That's right. Yes.
Like I remember, and they always were selling. The women were right. They were always selling cosmetics.
Yes.
Right. So great way to launch a cosmetic line.
Oh, it's huge. Absolutely. It's power branding at its finest. I mean, again, the shopping channel and what goes
You know
on
it.
today. I mean, it's incredible business. I love the teamwork from everybody. I mean, from the gaffers to the stagers to the camera guys to the set design. You know, I mean, everybody worked together as a team, and it really is an amazing place. And I just enjoyed working with professionals all the time. And that's what the shopping channel hired. It was all professionals. I mean, you're not going to get, nobody got there with no, you know. Well, you know what? This has been a great interview. And I really want to thank you for taking the time to talk about it. And it's so nice to see you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So
it's great to see you and actually see you without a mask. It's so nice to see people without a mask.
I know. It's, you know, people sometimes, you know, they'll come up to me somewhere and it's amazing. Like one day I met on the street a lady from Metro. As I was walking, I was going to the Metro, but she was coming off work and she waved to me and I had no idea who it was. And the next, about a week later when I was in the Metro, she said, by the way, that stranger that waved at you last week was me. And I said, I didn't know, you know. First of all, you see people out of context, number one, mask or no mask.
Right.
Sometimes they're in different clothing. They're just, you know, they don't have a name tag. They're not behind a till. So you go, I know them, but I don't know where.
Yeah.
But with the masks on, I mean, it's people are just, hi, you know. We all.
I know.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, what have you been doing for the last year and a bit during this madness?
Well, for the last 12 years, I've actually been working in as a designer, believe it or not. And I think you know that because I've run into you. Yes. But this last year and a half has been very slow. I went just before this hit. I was actually in Southeast Asia for 6 weeks. And then I came home and then COVID hit. So I got home in the nick of time, I think. Basically, having to design from afar, it's been a bit tricky because I need to do measurements of people's homes. And but slowly, I figured it out. You know, it took a few months, but I figured it out.
Sure.
So that's what I'm doing. I'm not working like I used to, though. That's for sure.
You know, I liked it better when the inmates ran the asylum rather than the government. You know, it was much better when we ran it, you know.
I know. It's true.
Sandy, so nice to see you. Thank you very much again for being on my, you know, show.
Nice to see you.
And we'll keep in touch and we'll always have the faith.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you. Okay. Bye. Bye.